Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. The background, I worked at a major tech company for over 2 decades. Over the years, I climbed the ladder from being a newbie to becoming a specialist fixer. I gained a reputation internally as a security and emergency response expert. I was often assigned the most challenging or seemingly unfixable projects, many of which made headlines. I have countless stories I can never share publicly, unfortunately. Let's just say that several senior vice presidents across various divisions knew me by name because I effectively tackled complex problems and coordinated teams of intense tech nerds to resolve major issues across multiple divisions over the years. It was incredibly fulfilling work. At the time of this story, around 2021, I was part of a small security team in a product engineering division. We were going through a turbulent period, and our team of 8 had endured multiple reorganizations and frequent manager changes. It was overwhelming, but we kept our focus on the work at hand, and we all got along well despite the chaos. A relevant side note, one of our better managers, let's call him Dave, assigned me a massive, complicated, and urgently important project to manage shortly before this story begins. It involved coordinating people from 6 different divisions, had significant legal implications, and our senior VP wanted it completed within an aggressive 4-6-week deadline. To complicate matters, Dave was about to leave on a long-planned vacation, so he apologetically informed me he'd be unavailable for the next 3 weeks and unable to assist. The project involved implementing something big and technical that had never been done before. No one was entirely sure how to do it, who all it would require, or what steps to take in what order. Some of the key players had what we politely called difficult personalities. Oh, and by the way, it would definitely make international news and cause ripples throughout the industry when we pulled it off. No pressure, right? Dave felt bad about leaving me with this thorny mess. "Look, Sarah," he said, "I know this is a lot to handle, especially with me being out of pocket, but I've seen what you can do, and I trust you to make this happen." I nodded, determined. "I appreciate the vote of confidence, Dave. I'll make sure we get it done." And you know what? I did it. We gathered all the people from all the divisions in a room and mapped it all out on a whiteboard. It took days, and hashed out how to do it before the deadline. Actually, well before, for bonus points. We lined everyone up to get it done. Before we executed the very big thing, I had to attend a meeting with the VP, executive leadership, several levels of management above me, and the legal team to present the plan and assure all the execs that we were ready and had everything under control. I looked the VP in the eye and said, "Sir, I can assure you that we've got this handled. We're ahead of schedule and ready to execute." He nodded, a hint of a smile on his face. "All right, Sarah, I'm counting on you." Then we did it. The team pulled off the big thing sooner than the deadline. It was flawless. We absolutely crushed it. Just another day at the office, right? 2. The inept manager. A few months after that epic project in early 2022, Dave left us for another role, and someone new moved over from an unrelated division out of nowhere. We'll call him Marcus. Marcus knew nothing about security. He knew nothing about emergency response. He didn't even know anything about what our division did. No one on our team had ever heard of this guy. He was that worst kind of middle manager, self-important, dismissive of everyone, obsessed with appearances and ego, micromanaging stuff he didn't comprehend, and just making everything worse. But he apparently knew people, and those people got him job assignments because of politics? Loyalty? He certainly didn't have any skills or experience relevant to our team. Ugh, that guy was the worst. One of Marcus's many weird quirks was that he didn't think it was appropriate for our team to disagree with or correct each other in front of other people. Things in tech, specifically product development, move pretty quickly, and things change all the time. So, if some of our team was meeting with someone from another team, and someone said something like, "So we decided to make the sky green and we're on schedule," and someone else on our team chimed in to say, "Actually, that's changed. We decided that the sky is now going to be blue, and we pushed the deadline back 2 weeks. That just happened in an earlier meeting." "Oh, okay, cool." Marcus would interrupt and say, "We clearly need to get on the same page. Let's end this meeting right now and reschedule when my team has all the facts straight." I remember one particularly frustrating instance when this happened. I spoke up, "Marcus, with all due respect, this is how we've always operated. It's more efficient to update each other in real time rather than constantly rescheduling meetings." He glared at me. "Sarah, that's not how we do things anymore. We present a united front, always." Other team members exchanged uncomfortable glances. We'd literally never have any meetings if we waited until everyone knew all of the same information all the time. Other teams would routinely leave meetings with us with inaccurate info which affected release schedules, resources. It was just a mess. 3. Marcus's hostility. Shortly after Marcus became our manager, he started being really hostile to me. Not to everyone on the team, just me. As far as I knew, I hadn't done or said anything to earn his hostility. Suddenly, after 20 plus years at this company, I could do nothing right. While this jerk didn't actually understand most of what my job entailed, he was sure I wasn't doing it right. And he was quick to tell me so, often in front of others. My coworker Tom pulled me aside one day. "Sarah, what's going on with Marcus? He seems to have it out for you." I shrugged, genuinely confused. "Your guess is as good as mine, Tom. I'm as baffled as you are." The thing is, I was the only woman on the team, and I have a disability. Now, I've been through some things working in high tech over those decades. It was very much an old boys club back then, and meh, I was fine. I'm not one to claim discrimination at the drop of a hat or for no reason. However, when I was trying to piece together the cause of this dude's hostility, some of his comments were sexist and not at all subtle. He also didn't like that due to my disability, and frankly my seniority, I was given one of the few offices with a door on it in our new building. The rest of our team was in open floor plan cubicles, which everyone hated. He was incensed that I, a lowly direct report, and woman, got an office, and he didn't. "This is ridiculous," he fumed one day. "How is it that you get an office while I'm stuck out here?" I tried to explain calmly. "Marcus, it's based on seniority and accommodations. I've been here for over 2 decades. He scoffed. "Well, it's not appropriate for a subordinate to have better accommodations than their manager." I had more seniority than just about anyone, so even without my disability, I'd have scored the office ahead of him. Note that other men in our division got offices too, because again, seniority, and that bothered him less. But I was the only woman on our floor with a door, and I was his subordinate. His ego did not like it, not one bit. He threw a fit about it, repeatedly. There were lots of other things he said. My favorite among them, towards the end, was him reprimanding me for my bad attitude in a meeting we just had. Marcus had told me beforehand not to say anything during that meeting, because he was insisting on sharing incorrect information again, and he knew I'd want to correct it. So I sat quietly and kept my eyes on the PowerPoint presentation, or the floor nearly the whole time. When I asked him how I'd had a bad attitude when I hadn't said anything, as he'd requested, he snapped, "I didn't like the look on your face." Okay, dude. After realizing there was nothing I could do to make this guy happy with my work and to lose his hostility, I finally went to HR to go on the record. I knew they'd do little about it, but I wanted to document it at least. So predictably, they told me to work harder at getting along with Marcus. And because it wasn't my first rodeo, I went back to my office and emailed HR saying, "Thanks for meeting with me about my concerns regarding Marcus. I fear his bias and misogyny will reflect negatively in my next performance review. HR should be aware that there is a real problem here, and I hope you'll take steps, etc., etc." Which of course they didn't. But now it was on the record. 4. The axe falls. And then a few months later in late 2022, he gave me a terrible performance review, as expected. Long story already long. He was trying to fire me for underperformance. Unfortunately for me, the company had started rounds of layoffs all over, and it was the worst possible time to be looking for another job internally. And now I had a bad performance review on my record too. I went back to HR and said, "That thing I said I was worried would happen when we met 6 months ago? That happened, exactly as I said. Now what?" HR, once again, was no help. Also, they'd done literally nothing. But hey, it was on the record again. Helpful for the attorney later. When I realized I couldn't find a new gig at my company because of all of the layoffs, sigh, I scored a new job for much more money at a different local tech company, and pretty quickly. I live in a tech-heavy area. There was lots of shuffling between 3, 4 big companies during this time period, and we'd often bump into other company veterans at these other companies. It was a small world. With my track record and references, it was super easy. After that was lined up, I called an employment discrimination attorney to negotiate my exit from the company I thought I'd work at until I retired. It was a sad day, because I had documentation with HR explaining Marcus's misogyny and ableism going back for some time, and because they'd done nothing about it, and because there were witnesses who confirmed his behavior, they had no leg to stand on. They agreed to write me a relatively nice check to go away, and to not sue them. And I agreed to not talk about the details of my separation agreement. I went down to my lawyer's office and signed the agreement. I looked to see who had signed the agreement for the company. I assumed it would be someone in HR, but it was still blank. I'd eventually get a copy once someone there signed it. I took my check and packed up my office and left. Bye, old company. I started my new job a few weeks later. 5. Karma begins. This was August of 2023 when I left. I got my copy of the executed contract in the mail in October. Who signed it for the company? Not HR, but my exec VP. The one who asked for the urgent, highly important, legally complicated project. The guy I looked in the eye personally, and then delivered on this very big thing trademark he personally asked for, before the deadline he asked for. That is who signed off on my separation agreement. I suspect that he had no idea until that moment that I was gone, and I imagine that he likely had many questions about what had happened. And also, why did they have to pay me a chunk of money on the way out? Whoops. I chortled when I saw it. Since the VP knew me and we had some history, and Marcus was new to the division and was one of hundreds of middle managers he'd likely never heard of, I'm guessing Marcus had some explaining to do. I really enjoyed the thought of that. 6. Karma for reals. Cut to November 2023. As I mentioned, it was a relatively small tech community in the area, and those of us who worked in security in particular at Company X would often encounter other current former colleagues at Company Y or Z or whatever. Heck, there was a ton of poaching going on between the companies. One day I got an in-company chat from someone who'd worked in security at my old company. We'll call her Lisa. Lisa asked me if I knew someone named Marcus. I felt my heart skip a beat. Yes, I replied cautiously. Why do you ask? He's scheduled to interview for an open management position here tomorrow, Lisa typed back. I was hoping you could give me some insight. It seems that shortly after my former exec VP had signed my separation agreement contract, Marcus was actively looking for a new job at a new company. Lisa asked me what I thought about Marcus. I said, I can't really talk about it for legal reasons, which, boom, everyone knows what that means. But if you wanted to ring my personal cell phone later this evening to catch up on old times, please do. She did. I hypothetically shared some stories with her about Marcus. I also told her where his hot buttons are, the appearance ego thing, the dominant stuff, etc., etc., and all about his misogyny and ableism, which was perfect since she was conducting his interview. I may have shared some specific scenarios, questions to ask, which I knew would set him off. Lisa, I said, just be prepared. He doesn't handle being challenged well, especially by women. Got it, she replied. I'll keep that in mind. I wished her luck, and for the love of all that is holy to please call me after, when appropriate, and tell me how it all went. It did not go well for Marcus. When Lisa rang me, I couldn't wait. How did it go? Well, she began, sounding both amused and exasperated. He got combative and angry and yelled at me twice during his interview to be hired as a manager. No way, I gasped. What happened? I asked him about his management style, particularly how he handles disagreements within his team, Lisa explained. He got defensive immediately. When I pressed for specifics, he started raising his voice, saying I was questioning his authority. It went downhill from there. There were lots more details, now lost to time, except at that company interview loops were assessed as such. Strong hire for this role hire, but not for this role. Not a good fit for this job, but we like them. No hire ever. Not for any role. Marcus's interview was rated that last one. No hire ever. Blacklisted from any job ever at one of the biggest tech companies in the world, after being pushed out the door of one of the other biggest tech companies in the world. Shortly after that, it appears that Marcus moved himself and his wife and kids a few states away to work at a smaller company in another region. It took less than 6 months from when I left my old company for him to be gone as well. What gets me, still, is that Marcus thought I was so inconsequential, so unimportant, that he didn't bother to check and see where I landed after he forced me out of the company I loved. And when he had to look for a job himself shortly thereafter, it also never occurred to him that I'd have connections with, thousands of colleagues I'd worked with over the years, some of whom could now be working at Company X or Y or Z where he was interviewing, and where I'd scored a huge raise for myself. To this day, he doesn't know why his interview at Company Y tanked so badly. And since Lisa was not legally precluded from sharing stories she had heard through the grapevine about Marcus's management problems, it's possible that other of our old security colleagues at Company Z and other companies in this area heard those stories too, which means he's unlikely to get a job at any major tech company in this area, maybe ever. Definitely not at X or Y, and they are big companies, among the biggest, and it's all because he's an a-hole, ableist, misogynist middle manager who underestimated little old me. The next one is an entitled People's story. I never thought I'd end up in a situation straight out of a TV drama, but here I am. It all started when I inherited an old apartment building from my uncle. He'd owned it for years, renting out the units to cover the mortgage and maintenance costs. When he passed away, I was surprised to find out he'd left it to me in his will. At first, I wasn't sure what to do with it. I had a full-time job and no experience as a landlord, but after crunching the numbers, I realized it could be a good source of passive income if I managed it right, so I decided to keep it and learn the ropes of property management. That's when I met Karen. She lived in one of the ground floor apartments and had been there for about 5 years. From our first interaction, I could tell she was going to be trouble. She cornered me in the lobby as I was doing a walkthrough of the building. "So you're the new owner?" she said, eyeing me up and down. "I hope you're planning on making some improvements around here. This place has gone downhill." I tried to be polite. "I'm just getting started, but I'll definitely be looking into any necessary repairs or upgrades. If you have specific concerns, feel free to let me know." She launched into a long list of complaints, from the color of the hallway carpet to the inadequate lighting in the parking lot. I made non-committal noises and jotted down a few notes, eager to escape. Over the next few months, Karen made my life hell. She called or texted constantly with trivial issues and demands. When I didn't respond immediately, she'd leave angry voicemails. She nitpicked every little thing I did and stirred up drama with other tenants. I tried my best to be professional and address legitimate concerns, but it was exhausting. I started to dread seeing her name pop up on my phone. Things came to a head when I decided to repaint the building exterior. I sent out notices to all the tenants about the upcoming work. The next day, Karen showed up at my office fuming. "How dare you paint without consulting me first?" she shrieked. "I'm allergic to paint fumes. You're trying to kill me." I took a deep breath. "Karen, I'm sorry if this is an inconvenience, but the work needs to be done. The painters will use low VOC paint and will make sure to ventilate the area properly. If you're concerned about the fumes, you're welcome to stay elsewhere during the painting process. I can even offer a discount on your rent for the affected days." But she wasn't having it. She ranted and raved, threatening to sue me for endangering her health. I finally had to ask her to leave when she started knocking things off my desk. After that incident, I seriously considered evicting her, but I knew that could get messy, and I hoped she'd eventually calm down or decide to move out on her own. I should have known better. A few weeks later, I got a bizarre call from the local police department. They said they'd received a report of trespassing at my building. Apparently, someone had called claiming to be the new owner and accusing me of refusing to vacate the property. Confused and alarmed, I rushed over to the building. When I arrived, I found 2 police officers talking to none other than Karen in the parking lot. "There he is!" she shouted, pointing at me dramatically. "That's the man who won't leave! I sold this building fair and square, and he's squatting here illegally!" I was speechless for a moment, trying to wrap my head around her audacity. The officers looked at me expectantly. "Officers, I'm sorry, but there's been a huge misunderstanding," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm the legal owner of this building. I inherited it from my uncle a few months ago. This woman is a tenant here, not the owner." Karen's face turned an alarming shade of red. "He's lying! I have proof of sale right here!" She waved a sheaf of papers in the air. One of the officers, a middle-aged man with a weary expression, held out his hand. "Ma'am, can I see those documents, please?" Karen handed them over triumphantly. The officer flipped through them, his brow furrowing. He showed them to his partner, who raised an eyebrow. "Sir," the first officer said to me, "do you have any documentation proving your ownership?" "Of course," I replied. "I have the deed and other paperwork in my office. I can go get them right now." As I turned to head inside, Karen let out a screech. "Don't let him go. He'll destroy the evidence." The younger officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, please calm down. We're going to sort this out." I quickly retrieved my documents and brought them back outside. The officers compared them to Karen's papers, conferring quietly. Finally, the older officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, these documents you've provided appear to be forgeries. Very poor ones at that. The letterhead is wrong. There are multiple spelling errors, and the notary stamp is clearly fake." Karen's smug expression faltered. "What? No, that's impossible. The real estate agent gave me those—" "What real estate agent?" I asked, utterly baffled. She glared at me. "The one who sold me the building, obviously. Some guy named Mike or Mark, something with an M." The officers exchanged glances. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come down to the station to answer some questions," the younger one said. "It appears you may have been the victim of a scam." "This is ridiculous!" Karen sputtered. "I paid good money for this place. I demand to speak to your supervisor." As the reality of the situation sank in, Karen's indignation turned to panic. She tried to make a run for it, but the officers quickly apprehended her. As they led her to the patrol car, she was alternating between sobbing and hurling insults at everyone in sight. I stood there, stunned, as the officers took my statement and collected the forged documents as evidence. They advised me to press charges for fraud and filing a false police report. Over the next few weeks, the full story came out. Karen, fed up with being just a tenant, had fallen for an obvious scam. Some con artist had convinced her he could sell her the building for a suspiciously low price. She'd emptied her savings account and even taken out a loan to pay him, blindly trusting the forged documents he'd provided. When she realized I was still acting as the owner, she panicked and decided to double down on her claim, hoping she could somehow bluff her way into ownership. In the end, Karen was charged with multiple crimes. She lost all the money she'd invested in the fake sale, and she was evicted from her apartment. I almost felt bad for her, but then I remembered all the grief she'd caused me and the other tenants. The whole ordeal was a wake-up call for me. I implemented stricter screening procedures for new tenants and set clearer boundaries with the existing ones. I also invested in better security measures for the building, just in case any of Karen's scammer friends got any ideas. Looking back, it's hard to believe how quickly things spiraled out of control. I guess you never really know what people are capable of when desperation and entitlement collide. But hey, at least I got a crazy story out of it, and one less problem tenant to deal with. The next one is a petty revenge story. At my job, there's a tight-knit group of people who are qualified to operate the small boats we use to support numerous other jobs. Things like environmental inspections, security checks, seaside pickup and drop-offs, and God forbid oil spills in the local area. This year, I finally finished my training and am now a proud member of the team. There's no pay benefits or anything, but it means I get to drop any other job I'm currently on to go do boat stuff. Especially during the summer, it's amazing. The small boat team has a very nice shop garage building separate from the main hangout called the Boat Shed. Very original name, I know. Filled with supplies, tools, everything you'd need before heading out on the water. Most importantly, they store the life jackets, the pre-launch safety checklists, and the Coast Guard compliant radios we use for communication in the shed. The shed is kept locked because of all the nice things kept inside, and people will take anything that's not bolted down, if given the chance. On to the main story. Most of the team works the traditional day shift. Me and one other work the night shift. Day shift does most of the work, so night shift doesn't get a lot of boat time. But when we do, it's almost always me and a co-worker we'll call Red. Red is a nice enough guy, we work well together, but for some reason he adamantly refuses to tell me the combination to the boat shed. It's not a problem when we work together, but if he's out sick that day, I can't get in. That is, until I figured out the code myself. Through trial and error and a lot of patience, I painstakingly found the correct code, so now I can get in whenever I need to. Hooray! But then I had a thought. If I tell Red I know the code, life goes on. But if I don't tell him, then he has to come open the door for me each and every time I need to go in. And that's exactly what I've been doing, so for months now, I'll just find an excuse to get in the shed. "Hey Red, I got my own waterproof jacket. Can you let me in the shed to hang it up?" Or, "I noticed one of the mooring lines is frayed. Can you let me in the shed to get a replacement?" My favorite one is, "Red, can you go grab a checklist and a radio for me, please? It's my turn to drive, so I gotta do the checks." And every time he goes out and opens the door for me. The best part is, one night when Red wasn't there, the boss would come out with me. We go to the boat shed, he offers to get the door, but I tell him no need and open it myself. I've complained in the past about Red not telling me the code, and he said he can't force Red to tell me the code. So now he asks, "Did he tell you the code?" I say no and explain my petty revenge. He laughs, calls me an evil genius, and we go on with the work. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.